Hi, hello, future me here. Just cutting in real quick at the very beginning here, because I just want to make sure that you guys know that for like the next 50 minutes, you are about to hear possibly the most scuffed audio I've ever had to do. Basically, I got a new webcam, and plugging it in apparently caused it to completely override anything vaguely resembling a, That's not how I wanted to phrase that. What it did is that it overrode my normal voice input settings, so that instead the camera microphone was picking up all my audio when I was recording this, all 50 minutes of it, and not my Blue Yeti, which of course sounds 30 million times better. So, yeah, I'm sorry for the scuffed audio. Hopefully I've done a little bit of editing magic to make it sound better, but yeah, just be prepared. It's gonna hurt your ears a few times. Anyway, thank you. On to the video. Hello, my name is FFXIV, and welcome to a video. Duh. But yeah, welcome to a new video. I know it's been a little while since I've done anything related to streaming or making YouTube videos since just before Endwalker came out. And it's actually kind of twofold. Endwalker is the primary reason, but the secondary reason is I've also just been kind of sick. I've been sick since like the Wednesday before early access started, and I've just been kind of like ever since. So the end result is that I'm not feeling 100%. I'm feeling much better since it's been like a week and a half. I would hope I am. Otherwise, I'd probably have to see a doctor. But I'm definitely feeling a lot better now, though. And I just want to spend some time today to talk about Endwalker. The Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. Normally I wouldn't do this kind of video, but like just talking like so explicitly about an expansion like this, mostly because I just don't really have a good style for it, right? I'm obviously very prone to ramp. I don't do off-the-cuff videos very well, but I don't do scripted videos very well either. I'm too flat in scripted videos, and I'm too rambly and unfocused in unscripted videos. But I want to talk about it. Excuse me. I want to talk about it because, oh my god. for lack of a better word, oh my god. Endwalker was absolutely phenomenal. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it up a little bit. The first 5 or so minutes here, I think, will be mostly spoiler-free sort of general thoughts and impressions on, especially like on the technical side, how the game felt and played and everything. And then I'm going to get into the plot, because I absolutely want to talk about the story. So, excuse me, jeez, I'm dying. Yeah, so first things first, let's talk a little bit about Endwalker. Alright, so first things first. Game technicalities here. For one, the game I feel like looks better than ever. I mean, I'm not really shocked by that. There's always a technical jump. Especially in Final Fantasy XIV, each expansion, there's always been like a technical jump in like how good the game looks. But this does actually look absolutely fantastic. Everything about the locales and the animations and just everything. It looks so much better. It looks so good. Not so much better, but it looks so good. You know, it feels like it's like they took because like Shadowbringers already did a lot of technical stuff, especially with like cutscenes and everything. Shadowbringers did an absolutely fantastic job of like taking the game and expanding it, right? But if I could stop dying in the middle of this, that'd be great. Excuse me. Okay, jeez. Anyway, but like Shadowbringers already improved on what we've seen before, right? In this expansion, though, you could tell they went like the extra mile, to make the environments look great, to make you know, like to make the cutscenes look great, especially like the framing, the blocking, all that stuff is just absolutely phenomenal across the board in Endwalker. It's actually beautiful, and I cannot tell you how many times I was just wowed by the cutscenes, because, you know, I've been playing since A Realm Reborn. I've been playing since like 2.1, 2.2, something in that ballpark. You know, and I remember how limited almost how limited, like, visually the game felt all the way back then, right? And just to see the way it's jumped from what it was to what it is now. This was that very first cutscene, not the very first, but that early cutscene, though, when you're on the ship and you're traveling here to Sharlayan, and the way they just kind of flame it and block it, and, you know, and when, you know, when you see Hydaelyn / Vana on the ship and everything, and it's just compare that to, like, the early A Realm Reborn cutscenes, and I've seen them now because I, of course, leveled my alt on Phoenix server, and I decided to relive, like, all the cutscenes and everything from A Realm Reborn. I'll probably end up doing that like a third or a fourth time even. But I end up reliving, like, all the cutscenes and everything, and of course some of them are gone now. But the ones that are, of course, still there, which is still like 80% of them, just looks like they look so, it looks so different almost. Like, it feels so limited and small in scope compared to what we eventually would get, and I greatly appreciate that. I really appreciate how well the dev team did with it. The game just looks absolutely phenomenal. The sound design's great too, as always. Really started noticing that. I think that in, like, Stormblood, a lot of the sounds that are associated with, like, Omega are, like, really good. And that ends up translating here, of course, because, well, I won't talk about that quite yet. But it's just, like, on a technical level, the game just feels like it transcended yet another like tier, you know, like another tier on the pyramid, in terms of just the level of excellence, in terms of, like, the level of excellence that we're actually seeing in the game. Oh gosh, I gotta. Sorry, my brain kind of. I'm still a little, like, I'm still tired from being sick, and my brain is not, like, in, like, 100% focus mode right now. And I was just thinking about how I'm going to actually do the about how I'm actually going to, like, do this video. Because it's not like. It's gonna require some editing if I want to make it kind of nice. But I don't think I mind it too much. It'll just take a little bit to actually get it done. But anyway, yes. Alright, I got all that gushing about the technical parts of the game out of the way. So, let's start talking about the story. I really just want to... And this is really what's going to be. I'm just really just going to talk about the story and the characters as they come up. Because I think... It's just so... I just think that... There's just so much to talk about, realistically. That's just what it is. There's so much to talk about. And I hardly know where to start. I mean, I guess I'll just talk about the story in order. And yes, this will be a super spoilery section. I don't want to hold back on talking about the story at all. I want to talk about the story, because the story was great. It was a satisfying conclusion, you know, to this almost decade-long epic that that's been in the making, and it's just it was just phenomenal, and I just want to talk about it. So let's start from the very beginning, I guess. The opening. So, like, those level 8, so, like, the level 80 quests set in Sharlayan and in Razatan and Labyrinthos and Thavnair, right? And those 4 zones. Excuse me. Excuse me. It's a great intro, actually. It's very slow, and on some level, like, the part of me that actually, you know, that absolutely wants to, like, experience the story and everything, the part of me that like it wanted to experience the story and everything thought that the slowness was a little bit of a drag at times. But I have no inclination to complain overly much about it because, ow. I have no particularly strong inclination to complain about it overly much because because at like the end of the day, it's not like it's a it's not like it's not like it's a bad thing, obviously. You know, you know, the reason it exists mostly is for like setting up character, setting up the areas that we're going to be visiting again. It's setting up the story and everything, and that setup is extremely important. I cannot emphasize that enough. The setup of like the story and the places and everything is so important. And if the writing team and everything had like completely, you know, like neglected that, we would have felt that, you know, we would have felt it. We would have not felt the kind of emotional attachment we did to the broader plot if that had happened. And I'm very glad that they decided to set it up really slowly in the beginning. One of my favorite moments, actually, and I'm not gonna lie, it made me I bust out laughing when it happened. Is when you get to the is when you go to the Great Work, and everyone is just like passed out, and you're like, oh my god, what happened here? What's going on? Why is you're like, oh my god, what's happening? What's happened? What's going on? What happened to all these people? Are they all right? And then Varshan comes along with all the scales, and he's like, alright, I have a bunch of new dragon scales for you. By the way, I also love the fact that basically Thavnair is Final Fantasy XIV India. I think that's a really fun... I think it's a really fun touch, and I like how it creates like a unique culture within the game itself, you know? Because in a lot of ways, all the various regions of the world kind of just feel like you know, like a, how do I describe it? They all feel like a different version of Eorzea, basically. You know, it's kind of like in the same way that a lot of American media inadvertently turns like foreign locales and everything into, you know, into like different flavors of America, basically. That's kind of like what a lot of like regions in Final Fantasy XIV, even like the Far East, like it just like, you know, like Kugane, just honestly, Kugane just feels like Japanese Eorzea, okay? It doesn't feel like its own unique place and time, and not time, but own unique place in the universe, right? Or I'm trying to think what other good examples of this. I mean, Doma has the same issue actually too, right? There's lots of places though that don't. Oh, Bozja. Bozja is a good example of like places that feel like they are just like another flavor of Eorzea, right? But Thavnair, I think, is the very first place in this game that feels distinctly like its own unique independent culture, completely independent. And maybe it's just because the touch of having the accents, of having the people have Indian accents, you know. But it was very smartly done. You know, it makes it feel like a unique place, and a unique place that needs to be protected, you know? And I love that very much. And of course, it's very heavily impacted by, you know, that early impression of the... Okay, I just fell. But it's very heavily impacted by that first impression of, like, the people at the Great Work being, you know, being completely exhausted and sleeping. And then they just immediately all just perk up. And they're like, oh, scales! Scales! And they all just run up and they'll go for the scales, and then they see Astinia and like, oh, dragon person! Oh, it was so funny. It was so funny. It was very well done. Honestly, the comedy, the little moments of levity, the little moments of comedy to lighten the load of the what is it called? The pathos of the drama and the heavier, more philosophically deeper moments in the story were just so well done. The writing was well done. The execution was perfect. Because the story's full of moments of levity like that. You know, and it's very brilliantly done. And I can't for the life of me complain about it in the slightest, because it makes me feel so connected to the universe too. It makes me feel so connected to the setting and to the... It makes you feel so connected to the setting and to the place. It gives you a sense of... what you're fighting for in the end, you know? And I love it. And it's a great way to intro the game. And then, of course, these events culminate in the Tower of Zot, the first dungeon, and the first dungeon, it's actually really good. I really like it. I love the use of the Tower of Zot theme from Final Fantasy IV, my favorite mainline Final Fantasy game. Granted, I've not played enough of them, I think, to make that judgment particularly accurately, but of the handful I have played, Final Fantasy IV remains my favorite. And the use of the Tower of Zot theme, the use of the Mage's Sisters and everything, it's all just so good. It's so good for someone who's a fan of that game. It's just a good way to intro the expansion. And then, of course, your victory of the Tower of Zot leads into the Ilsabard contingent part of the game. And oh my god, Garlemald, what a spectacularly done section from start to finish. It is so powerful and impactful. First of all, just starting with the Ilsabard contingent, the gathering of your forces, and the way they incorporate all sorts of like job and class NPCs and everything from. It was just so fun. It was so fun walking into the throne room like, oh my gosh, it's Alcazolta and Chuchuto, and I forgot your name, you know, and there's a Mandalane hiding in the background there, you know, stuff like that. You know, of course, Lys is right there in the center, and then the Eastern delegation comes up, and of course you got Serena and what's his face, Magnai and Sadu, and of course Rostic is there from the Bozja storyline, and that's just like, it's all like really, really nice details. It's really good and fun and nice detailing. And your mission is such a good one too, you know, to provide relief for, you know, the people who live here, you know, who live in the shadow of the Tower of Babel and in the ruins of their civilization, basically. You know, you're here to help these people. You know, because I mean, look at this. Look at this real quick, if you would. You know, on the screen, and just look at the city in total ruins and everything. And that's just, it's so well done. You know, and the way this story kind of flows, the way it kind of starts off small and simple. Well, actually, no, it starts off big, with Metal Gear Thancred and the big set piece battle on the Magna Glacius. Which I thought was really cool. And actually, I really wish they had taken the time to make a second set-piece battle with the contingent as well. Because I actually think that, because I think that the story would have, not the story, but I think that in terms of just fun factor, that would excuse me, that would have been a great thing to add into the story. You know, a second set-piece battle where you're fighting alongside all your allies and everything. I think that would have been fun. I think it would have been fun and really great. Because that first battle is great, and I think we just needed a second one. I think we needed a second one where we're fighting united, you know, and together, and to maybe to open up the path to the Tower of Babel rather than the way they did it. You know, the way they did it's fine. Don't get me wrong. You know, having a little, you know, going out into the, you know, finding a little side route through which you can infiltrate it. You know, that's okay. It's just, I personally love big set-piece battles and everything, and movies and books and video games. And I think that a second one would not have gone amiss here. But yes, it's a very good. It's a very good. It's just a very good section. And then of course, there's the actual story elements. The finding those few survivors out in the outskirts of the city here. By the way, I love how in the game how the regions will transform utterly depending on whether or not you're flying or on the ground. Like, because when you're down here, I mean, look at that. Look at how the way, like, the background is, like, almost shadowed because it's so dark. And that's because of the environment, actually, because all the buildings are black and everything, so you can't really see back there, right? So when you're out here in the field and you're trying to help the survivors, right, it's like you can't get a really strong sense of, like, what things are like outside of the snowfields here. And that's just like storytelling done through the map design, and I think that's really smart and really brilliant. But then, of course, the story takes you over here to this house, and, there's a handful of survivors, and they don't trust you. They don't trust you at all. And you can't blame them, necessarily. Between propaganda and the fact that basically you look like an invading army, you can't blame these people for not trusting you at all. It's not their fault that they don't trust you. You can't hold them responsible for... You can't hold them responsible for the environment that they live in, that they grew up in. And then, of course, that leads to eventually, that tragedy eventually leads to, hey, look out's fun. Anyway, but eventually that tragedy leads to, discovering the remnants of the First Legion hidden in the train station. And of course, these people are freezing to death. They are dying. They are slowly dying because they are out of supplies. And Quintus, the commander, is basically clinging on to the very long odds of a hope of reinforcements arriving from several other Imperial legions. And you can't blame him for it, really. He's trying to maintain a semblance of the world that he has known for decades. And of course, that's not how it pans out. And of course, it ends very darkly. And this is like the first moment where I knew the story was going to take itself like super seriously. It was going to take itself incredibly seriously because, of course, what happens is that through the contingent, Quintus learns that the 10th Legion has in fact sued for peace with the Eorzeans. And with that, it's like his entire world just falls apart. And of course he kills himself. In easily, quite possibly, the darkest moment in the game. Because it is so real and visceral compared to a lot of other moments that we've seen in Final Fantasy XIV. Like even some of the biggest, most emotional moments, like Harshaphant's death, or I don't even know right now. But even moments like that, still have like this crazy fantasy moment to it. But with Quintus's suicide, it literally is just he shoots himself in the head. And there's no sugarcoating it. It's something that on a very practical level we can understand because it's how people would end their own lives in real life. And it's nuts. It's nuts how because that's like the first moment where you really realize like it's like, oh wait, the game is taking itself incredibly seriously. Like there's no in this moment, there is no pretense that... There's no pretenses here, There's no pretenses in this moment. This is literally... Oh, I have to take this game seriously because the game is taking itself seriously. And it's always been taking it, and don't get me wrong, it's always taken itself seriously. But the way that moment is like a shift, a paradigm shift in the mood and the tone. You know? There's nothing heroic about this, there's nothing good about this. It's a dark moment. And that dark moment is everything, basically. And I like how also Euless is used as, the character of Euless is used as our, you know, as our sort of perspective character, our normal Garlean soldier who clearly has like kind of been promoted beyond like what he would be otherwise because he's so young. But you know, you get to see things through his eyes, and it helps to ground the fears and the terrors of the, you know, of our you know, of the people we're trying to help. And of course that leads that does lead into the body swap episode, doesn't it? Ooh boy, that was crazy too. Ooh gosh, like Garlemald is filled with all these moments, all these dark emotional moments, all these heavy moments. Everything from Anima tempering the Garleans, all that, and of course, you get kidnapped at one point, and you get your body swapped, and you have to struggle in a solo duty that it's so difficult. You know, you're just trying to survive, and you're not like strong like as the warrior of light. You're not in the frail or feeble body. Look at that spot. But you're not like frail, like it's not like, let's say that you're frail or feeble, but you're just a normal person. You're not the hero of the story. I also just realized I said there's another lookout spot, but I'm not. I was on my own video there. But just traveling through these streets, trying to avoid the big dangers, wandering around and trying to find your way out so you can save your friends. And I mean, it feels very scripted in its way, right? But the tension is there. The tension of running through these streets that are full of monsters and tempered people and machines is just... It was something else. It was something else, Like, this isn't scary at all, obviously. I'm level 90, and, I'm running through streets with level 83 enemies, but it's just so... It's just so impactful, And then, of course, that leads to Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel, and that was again another good dungeon. All the dungeons are good. I'm not really gonna remark on that going forward. All the dungeons were really, really good. But of course that leads to the moon. You're taken to the moon because using that giant beam, the seal on Zodiark is almost broken, and of course, Fandaniel and Xenos travel to the moon to try and break the final bindings on Zodiark, which they succeed in doing. And then Fandaniel, of course, possesses Zodiark, forcing you to defeat him. And I thought that was actually extremely good writing, because the writing in that basically is that Fandaniel forces your hand, right? The whole plan basically is to force you to kill Zodiark. And it's very, like, obviously you're going to fight Zodiark at some point. This has been hinted at since the Realm Reborn, right? But the way they handled it so that basically you had no choice, because that Zodiark is the... You know that Zodiark is the... you know that Zodiark is the... the thing through Shadowbringers. Zodiark is the entity that is holding the world together and preventing the final days, right? But your hand has been forced. If you let Fandaniel as Zodiark run free, then he's going to cause untold amounts of destruction, and it's like the alternative is that you have to bind Zodiark somehow. Now, of course, you almost succeed, but then Fandaniel, of course, destroys Zodiark and himself in turn in order to bring about the final days. And of course, it's all very cleverly written. I'm not gonna lie, I'm also surprised because I wasn't expecting both Garlemald and the Moon, Mare Lamentorum, to be so early in the narrative. I was not expecting them to be so early in the narrative like they were. It was actually very much a surprise. Very well done though, but I was very surprised by it. And then of course, as soon as Zodiark is defeated, the Loporrits come into play, and oh my gosh, I would have thought, I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw them, like, oh god, these things are too fucking cute, I'm gonna hate it. I'm gonna hate the Loporrits. And then that is, I just aggroed that. And then of course that's not what happened. Even like Living Way's like squeaky, goofy little voice, I don't know, they made the Loporrits so endearing. And I don't just mean like cute, I mean like they made them like endearing. Like they made their earnestness and forthrightness and everything, they just made it so... They made it perfectly, truth be told. They made it so that it's like, how can you not love this? How can you not love them, And then of course at least the revelation that the Moon is actually an escape ship. And then once that's all done, right, you head down, you have a little rest period, and then the final day starts. And oh boy, the final days in Thavnair, that was absolutely some of the most phenomenal storytelling I've ever seen in a video game. I mean, it's very formulaic, very predictable, but it's not even that predictable. But it's very straight. But like you can kind of know where the story beats. Story beats are going, right? There's nothing shocking about how it happens. But oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so good. The dungeon is fantastic, and then of course that leads into you get to Razatan, and things just go south. You immediately realize it's like, okay, so it's despair. I don't think they actually explained at that point. No, they just did. But the despair, of course, causing the people to transform in the square and everything, and it results in endless tragedy and everything, and it's just... And then, of course, that leads to Palakastand and the way that... And they're just trying to find this family, to find this one family that Matsuo knows, and the father dies, and you're still searching, and you're still looking for hope, and everything, and it's horrible. It's actually horrible. Like, it's dark, and it's oppressive, and it's scary. Even more than anything, it's scary. These monsters stalking everywhere, and it's like, and all these people are dying. It's not like prior where it feels like you managed to save people. No, like there are dozens of people like dying, in the game. And it has weight. It has weight. It has impact. And I just think that's amazing, honest to goodness, that they managed to pull that off. Because It's phenomenal. And then of course you finally find, well, you find the mother and the child, and the mother gets killed. The mother gets killed, you know, like right away, right? And it's up to Matsuya, and of course there's all these monsters everywhere, so it's up to Matsuya to try and save the child. And the way they frame that cutscene, the way like all hope just kind of drains out of that moment, you know, because the child is starting to transform into an what do they call them? Not abomination, blasphemy. You know, the child starts transforming into a creature, and Matsuya starts transforming, and he comes face to face with these. He comes face to face with two other blasphemies, right? And it's like, no, you know. I remember distinctly, like literally going, no, this can't be the end. And then Astinian and Vritra come screaming out, and it's like in that moment, the way hope just gets restored is just such a moment. It is such a moment. You know, they couldn't have done that any better. They couldn't have. I don't think they could. They could not have framed that any better. The way they kind of like rip like all the heart out of you, you know, where it's just like, you know, these characters that you care about, you know, it's like they're about to die, and then restoring hope in that moment. It's just, oh gosh. I don't mean to gush like so mindlessly, but that moment just impacted me so heavily. It was so brilliantly executed, and I can't tell you how much I love it. Like, I can't express in words how much I love that moment. Now, of course, saving Palika Stand leads to, you know, it's like, okay, so we gotta learn more about, like, you know, okay, so we gotta learn more about the, you know, we have to learn more about the final days, right? Right? Like that's what we have to do. We have to learn more about the final days. We have to figure out what's going on with the final days. All that stuff. And so, of course, it's proposed that you go to the Crystal Tower on the 1st and, you know, see if you can't talk to Elidibus, right? And Elidibus, you know, sends you to the past to see if you can learn any more in the days leading up to the final days, right? And it's so funny. So when that cutscene first starts, right, and everything, right, you're just kind of exploring around, but it's like, okay, there's not much I can do. I'm literally just like an ephemeral spirit, right? And then, lo and behold, who would show up in Elpis at that time, but Hythlodaeus and Emmet Selk, right? You know, and the way they just did that cutscene, the way they had like Emmet Selk just kind of like glance at you, and then pointedly ignore you. I'm like, and I knew that it was deliberate, right? But even then, my brain still went, did he see me? Nah, he didn't, right? There's no way he saw me. Right? And I legitimately thought that. I think I said it out loud, in fact, right? And of course, it just kind of like... And then, of course, the discussion goes on, and Hythlodaeus is like, so you see it too, right? I have no idea what you're talking about. And their banter, by the way. Banter, top-notch banter. I love those two. But, you know, and he's like... And Hythlodaeus is like, no, it's right here. It looks like a Zem, right? You know, why don't you give it some ether to see if we can, like, I don't know, get a better sense of what it's like, right? And like, and Emmet Selk's like, all right, fine, right? And he does that, of course, and then the cutscene transitions, right? I'm thinking, like, at this point, it's like, okay, this is going to be a little more involved than I thought it was going to be, you know, because I thought it was just going to be like some sort of side thing. And then, like, my chat log appears for like a split second. And it says, You have discovered a new location. And I don't, bear in mind, I'm playing on my own. I'm on my own here. There's no streaming, no nothing. You know, so I'm not even trying to react outwardly to things in the game, right? And I see that. I'm like, what? I literally shouted. I'm like, what? This is Zone 5? I was absolutely floored by it. I wasn't expecting it in the slightest. I was not expecting in the slightest for this to be the fifth zone to explore. I don't think I've ever been like surprised like that in that way. But here I was. I'm just like, no way, you know. And of course it turns into its own adventure, you know, where basically you team up with Hyclodeus, Emet-Selch, and Vana, you know, and you're trying to uncover the secrets of the final days and what the root cause was. And of course, as it turns out, it's all Hermes' fault. Which I think is even funnier because it's like, okay, when you send out basically deep space exploration probes, you don't send out the deep space exploration probe with a deep philosophical question. You send it with basic information, not asking people the meaning of life. But of course that's what he did, and you know, that's why we have the final days as a result. But and oh my gosh, Meteion. I love Meteion. She's so adorable. And of course, expecting her to, I wasn't sure what they were going to do with her. Honest to goodness, before it was revealed that she was actually the root cause of the final days, I had thought that what it was going to be is that the Meteions were going to actually discover like some sort of like malevolent entity out in the cosmos that was going to be drawn to Aetheris because of encountering her. And of course she just ends up becoming the malevolent entity herself because Hermes is a moron. Bear in mind, I actually love the character, but Hermes made a very big mistake in sending her out there, sending her and her sisters out there to ask the question, you know, to ask like this deep philosophical question, right? Like that was his mistake. That was his problem and his mistake, and he's the reason that happened. But oh gosh, kind of lost my train of thought here because I've been gushing so much that I totally forgot where I was going to go with that. But no, but it's just yeah, Elpis was a wonderful surprise, and I'm so glad that they decided to. I'm so glad they decided to take the story in this direction like this. It was just so smart because it allowed us to experience. Because people became absolutely enamored with the ancients and Amarot and everything, and creating this scenario where we got to experience their world. You know, we got to experience the world of the ancient world, the world unsundered, is just so. It's just so good, you know. It's so good and so smart. But yeah, so oh yeah, I was talking about the final days and how I thought leading up to this, I thought they wanted like some sort of malevolent entity. And when the report started, when Meteion started the report and started talking about how like all the worlds out there were dead, I thought that's actually exactly where it was going. Until it's like, no, the worlds are dead because basically what happened is that all these peoples found perfection, or they attained like some sort, you know, they attained like the pinnacle of their civilizations, and consequently they ran out of things to live for, essentially. I thought that was actually... It's not the direction I personally would have taken the story, but it was a very unique direction to take the story. I love the philosophical implications of it and the questions and the question it asks. It's very sci-fi, honestly. It's very science fiction. This game took a very hard sci-fi turn in this expansion, and I like it. I appreciate it a lot. I like how it ends up leading to you traveling to the edge of the universe on board a spaceship, of all things. I absolutely enjoy that. It's very smart because it's very bold. That's the thing about it. It's a very bold story. And that works in its favor. And I like how throughout the entire story they ground it in they ground the story in the I like how they ground the story in the characters, in the scions and everything, and all the new characters you meet. It makes for a very emotionally resonant story, and it's very good. It's amazing, honest to goodness. And then of course it all leads to the end where your friends and your allies have to keep sacrificing themselves in order to keep making progress here in Ultima Thule. And I like how the game introduces it. I like how these are all basically just fragments recreated by Medion of all these dead civilizations, and how it starts actually on Dragonstar, Midgard Sormer's homeworld, destroyed by the Omicrons, which you also get to see. It ties a lot of things that we've seen we've seen since Heaven's Word, together very neatly. And I like that. It's very good. I like how the story ties itself together, and there's and all the elements work together as a cohesive whole. It's not well, yeah, Midgard Sormer and his brood are aliens basically, right? And it's is that ever actually going to be relevant? And in fact, it was. Because you get to learn about them. And you get to learn about how it all kind of shook down, And then of course you learn that, you learn a thing or two about Omega's people, the Omicrons. And I just think it's all very brilliant. It's all very well done. It's all very brilliantly done. And how at the very end, of course, it's well, you could bring your friends back, but doing that right away might be a stupid idea, right? So what do you do instead? You bring Emmett Silk and Hythlodaeus back, and they help you to secure the return of your friends. And it's just the amount of emotional resonance at the very end of the story. And then, of course, the way that Xenos appears. It's because what are you gonna do with Xenos, right? What are you possibly gonna do with Xenos, right? Because at this point, he's basically kind of just there, and even he knows he's kind of just there. Even he realizes that he's just there. He doesn't serve a purpose in this story, because all he wants to do is just beat the crap out of you, right? And apparently you can't land on this island. But the way he shows up in the form of Shinryu and is literally your battlefield in the final trial, it's something else. I'm like, what is trying to break through? Because you're bam, and the cracking. And then suddenly Shinryu, I'm like, what? I did it again. I did the what again? And it was just so, there's so many moments in this expansion that I I actually like had like these powerful, visceral, emotional reactions to the events that occurred. And I love it. I love every moment of it. I loved every moment of the expansion. And it's like, it's funny because I feel satisfied by it. You know, I feel completely and totally satisfied by this expansion. You know, the story didn't let me down. The characters had great resolutions. You know, things went a little differently than I might have preferred in some cases, like especially some story beats and storytelling elements. But there was nothing major, you know? It was nothing major at all, and it just... yeah. So, I know that was full of spoilers, but if you have actually never played Final Fantasy XIV, I'm sure plenty of you who are actually watching this video probably never have. If you're any sort of long-time viewers of my channel. Then my honest-to-goodness recommendation is, if only for the story alone, play Final Fantasy XIV. Experience it for yourself. See what I mean when I gush all over this game and talk about it, because it's an absolutely phenomenal experience from beginning to end, and it deserves your patronage. You know, the developers and everything, they deserve your patronage. I've probably spent several $100s on this now for my subscription for the game and buying expansions and everything. I probably easily spent probably close to like $800 or $900 total, right? And I regret not a single penny that I've spent on this game, because if they can produce content this good, then how could I regret spending that kind of money? Anyway, alright. I want to thank you all for watching, though. I know it's been a very long video. I've been recording for 52 minutes, and most of that is not going to get edited out because it's just been a very long stream of consciousness. So, I hope that you buckled in for this long video, and if you did, I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to get back into the swing of things. Now that Endwalker is complete, I'm going to try to get back into the swing of things, get back into streaming especially. And hopefully editing some videos, hopefully getting books read. I definitely have. I'm still plugging away at the Druid of Shannara. I've only been at work a few days the past couple of weeks, so and work is where I redo most of my reading. So catching up on that is definitely going to be paramount, especially because I have a new book to read as soon as the Druid is finished. And I will be reviewing its whole series. I will talk about that when I'm done with Druid, however. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Do check out Final Fantasy XIV, and I will catch you next time.